Hi, my name is Arie van Bennekum. I'm one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto, and I welcome you to this Agile Practitioner Masterclass. It's a short video masterclass, and when you've done the videos, you will be offered for free an exam of 15 questions. I wish you good luck, and I hope you will pass. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's start. Let's start this training with a very simple question. Why? Why are we doing Agile? You know that we wrote the Agile Manifesto in 2001, but years before, the authors of the Agile Manifesto, all in their own way, started to work differently. They tried to solve a problem. And if you want to bring that problem down to one line, it was continuously the problem of being late. Being late because there's rework on the functional side, on the technical side, very inefficient ways of working. That's the why. So in Agile, if you talk about why, it's avoiding delay. And it's avoiding delay of bringing the potential business value to the market, out there. And when I say to the market, I do not mean only for-profit organizations, but also governmental organizations, not-for-profit organizations. They need to bring their solutions into the market as fast as possible. As fast as possible is changing. It's not the same like it was 25 years ago. In 1994, when I started working differently, we said, within 6 months you have to deliver. And I think today 6 months might be a lot and risky. And that is because we have a world of technology that we live in, and the technology that we have is not only helping us in how we move around on the globe as an individual person, but also as a professional. It helps us in our job, it helps us in our daily life. But if you look at from the organization side, from the corporate side, what the same technology does is it disrupts business models. If we look, for example, at the world of the telecommunication industry, what you will see is that we have in 1994 a different business model from 2004, from 2014, and from 2024 coming in a couple of years. From selling original phone call minutes to selling SMS text messages to selling internet access, and what will be next we don't even know. So you can see this is changing the way we live, but also the way that organizations are are out there, the way they have their existence. One of the examples that you can say, for example, Uber, the taxis. Uber itself is not even having taxis itself, right? It's the people connected to Uber. Uber itself is a platform that we 25 years ago didn't even know. We have businesses in the time of technology that came and went already and had to change their business model. And even in the industry that we all know, the fintech, in the past it was a bank, right? In my own little village where I live with 17,000 people, I think it was 10, 12 years ago, we had 6 bank offices, and 2021 in the summer, the last bank offices disappeared out of the village, right? Just to give you an idea. So what you need as an organization is to be able to deliver fast, very high quality materials, solutions, products, and also make sure that you can adapt while you are working on it to the change that's going on, because change has always been out there, but these days it's faster than ever in terms of changing the business models, changing potential technology, and all the other changes that it brings along. What we also know in the way Agile working, Agile transformations are sort of difficult. So I want to give you something that, in the old way of working that is causing a lot of this delay that I talked about. And that delay is something that we need to take out. And in Agile working, you still see a lot of little bits and pieces remain from this. So I want to bring them to you very clear. So to give you an idea, let's just make a drawing of the old school waterfall, right? And I remember that I had a couple of years doing a masterclass, and I made this drawing, and someone said to me, we don't work like this anymore for years. Well, that's great, that's awesome if you don't, but so many do, right? So, and then even in Agile organizations, you see elements of the waterfall still coming back. Let's look at the situation here. Client. The client, the one that justifies the fact that we are existing, right? The client. very important. In the manifesto, we talk about the happy client, right? Value to the client. So let's say that we have a conversation here, right? So information goes in. And we have an analyst, and then later it will become a functional designer and a technical designer and a developer, and then we have testers and the UAT, and we have pre-ops, and then we have ops. Let's just keep it like this. What happens is a flow of continuous events that we take for granted but are not really helpful, and I will explain to you why they are not helpful and how they cause a delay and how we should be able to take them out. So what the analyst does is he takes the information in conversation with the client, maybe a series of conversations, and then making a document out of this. This document is sent to the next station. And that, in this simple case, it's a functional designer. And based on that document, the functional designer is making a functional design, obviously. The next one is here coming in, right, the technical design, and it repeats, right? So we can see this is repeating, right, going in, etc., etc. What we know, if you have information coming in, you make your interpretations and assumptions. And the one thing that we know about interpretations and assumptions is they're wrong. And you cannot analyze interpretations and assumptions away, because interpretations are made by the way we take information in. And to just make it very clear, the interpretations are based by the way you're framed. You know, you have your education, you have your background, you have your experience, you have the mood of the day even, and that will make that you make your own interpretations and assumptions. And if you do a talk of 3 minutes to a group of 20 people, and you will ask what you talked about, you will get 20 different versions. Now, in general, that's not a problem, but if you are talking to the client to hear at the end to deliver something, you need to make sure that you are aligned with the client. So that alignment needs to be built. And what we have here is this, what we call, and this is for me a very important topic to cover, it's remote and written, the communication. And what is the result? When you look at the remote and written communication, where it starts with the interpretations and assumptions, I call it translation, right? You translate everybody with their own interpretations and assumptions. And this is very often why clients, at the end of the process, they are really surprised by what they get, not in a positive way, because they will say, oh, this is not what I asked for, this is not what I need, this is not helping me. And the question is, how does it come? Well, first of all, because of the interpretations and assumptions, we have a lot of misunderstandings. Basically, we deliver the wrong stuff. And the point is, if you are having misunderstandings and you want to fix this, you will be confronted at the end that you have misunderstandings. And to repair the misunderstandings, you have to do rework. And rework takes time. Is delay. Remember, we want to avoid delay. The next thing that happens in here is the fact that here we talk to the client, and you see, we don't talk to the client, or we ask the client to make a confirmation of those documents. And I remember that I was talking to a client of mine, she was the head of a pension department, and she said to me, looking at the functional design, she said, Ari, tomorrow I have to tell your people whether this is right or wrong, but I don't understand what's in here. And then she said, she spoke magical words. She said, and I can ask my IT department if it's correct what's in here, but my IT department doesn't know in detail what my people do. So what you get is a problem in the language. So you have in here, you have in let's say the handover of information, you have the language going on, and the handover itself, you know, where you go from one to the other, one station to the other, you know, that's a very inefficient process, very inefficient. And the inefficient process needs to be fixed, right? That's what we know. And of course, it's time. And time is delay. The language creates back, you know, the misunderstandings, right? So you can see it coming back to each other, right? Misunderstandings. And there's also another problem here. This client, very human, will ask you, okay, when is it ready? And we just started. So we're asked to make an estimate and in something in time, and we just don't know. So we will commit to something that we really don't know. And what you will get is, in terms of the estimates, I always say estimates, interpretations, and assumptions are a triplet. What you will see is that they're all wrong, and then you get at the end, what you get is pressure. Because most of the time we commit to a date, but it turns every step takes a little bit longer, it seems a little bit more complicated, we need a little bit more extra talk, we have a little bit more new insights. So the pressure comes on, and what we do, is we start to rush the work when we get down the line, especially in this part, right, when we do the testing part. We have a lot of pressure, we have a rush, and I have been in situations talking to people where they said, Ari, we went live without testing because the pressure from the business was so high. I've been myself in a project in the early 90s where the time for testing was cut from 3 months to 1 month. Why? Because going down this waterfall line, it turns out to be a little bit more complex, a little bit extra time, and the time here was fixed. So in here, we started to cut time to be able to deliver on time. And the end result, when you come out of the pressure, when you have this rush, the big problem there is quality, right? And if you take them, you can say that the things that are going on in this waterfall is, first of all, is that we have a lot of misunderstandings from various causes, right? Misunderstandings. Second is we have a lot of inefficiencies. And the third one is we have a quality issue. Right, so those are here, and to fix them, it's rework is time. The inefficiency is just basically a loss of time, and the quality is rework. We have to fix the bugs, which is time. And Agile is about avoiding delay. Time is the one thing in the world that we live in today that we don't have. Agile is about avoiding delay. Now, one more thing to give you an insight on what happened when we wrote the manifesto. As I said, 17 people in the room, all working differently, but from their own perspective. And I want to show you that perspective. And then you get a better idea about Agile and the way it was originally meant to be, right? So if you look at when we were in the room, so it's that weekend in February, right there we are, and we had people going back to the previous slide, said, okay, we need to fix that quality problem. Other people said, okay, I was more focusing on the efficiency. And other people more on the value. Some people were focusing on, let's say, the individual, own responsibility, what is it that I can do, or maybe a pair. Some people were focusing on what we call the Agile team, a solution development team, 9 people or less, and other, large groups. And my perception of what we had in the room, and we talked about, okay, we want to solve these waterfall problems. And we all did it for a couple of years. I know that James Grenning started in 1998. I started working differently in 1994. Other people maybe already in the late 90s. I don't even know. But what we try, if you look at this one, right, you can say, for example, that in terms of quality and testing here, I think extreme programming and test-driven development are here. It's a team or on an individual level that you work on the quality. When it comes to the typical Agile team and the efficiencies that you can create in there, I would say Scrum is here. When you look at large groups, values, my own way of working in the late 90s and the beginning of the century with DSDM, or the Agile Project Management Framework, Agile PM or DSDM, right, was here. And then I think, but it can be debatable, but for example, when I look at the work from Alistair, or the work from Jim, or the work from John Kern, for example, feature-driven development, crystal, adaptive, and even one of the things that is for me essential, and I use a different color because it's dating from a different era, so to speak, is that I couldn't do the agile way of working without lean and Kanban, and they can be on any level, right, working. So you can see that this is sort of the background, the body of knowledge of agile working. And I always say, when we wrote the manifesto, John Kern had this very beautiful expression. He said, we left our egos at the door and we listened to each other to understand why we were working differently. And then you can see, and I'm not even complete here, right? But you can see, okay, this is, the body of knowledge. And you can say that agile is a concept, right? Because you have so many methodologies in there. And in every methodologies, we have practices, and the practices are the things that you do on a daily basis. That is what makes you agile. And depending on your need in the team and what kind of team that you talk about, you can cherry pick the practices from the methodologies. Right? So in terms of why are we doing agile? Avoiding delay. The waterfall has a number of problems embedded in it. We tried to solve that all in our own way, and while writing the manifesto we brought this together. And that gives you the opportunity to cherry pick as an agile practitioner, from the different methodologies, the practices that help you most. Give you one example. The daily is a practice that is in almost every agile methodology present. I don't even know all the proper names, but you have the daily scrum, you have the daily stand-up, you have the day start, you have the daily achievement meeting, and basically they're all the same, right? So you can see that we have in the concept multiple methodologies. Per methodology we have multiple practices. And this is how we try to solve the problem in the waterfall that creates a lot of delay. So we talk about agile and avoiding delay, but where is the fundament of the delay? What I know in the agile world, especially in the world of IT and software delivery, we talk a lot about tools. But agile, the success in agile and avoiding delay is really based on the interaction. I would like to say agile is an interaction concept. Tools, you need them. If you want to deliver at the end of every sprint to production in a software environment, you need tools. But if you focus on the tools, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? So we need to understand this one, and let's talk about the interaction concept for a couple of minutes, because this is where the fundament in agile comes from, right? So what we have here, like we made this previous flip chart, and what you say in the timeline is we do normally, if you look at this one, right, we have the analysis, the functional design, the technical design, development, test, the UAT, pre-ops, etc., etc. Now, the kind of thinking and the skills you need, but to avoid this problem that you have, that we wrote down here, you need to flip this process 90 degrees and have the skills together at the table. I once said at one moment in time, I said, agile is about having the right people talking at the right time, talking in the right way, about the right things. That's where we get the efficiencies. That's where we take out the misunderstandings. Right? This is so important to understand. Now, in terms of the interaction, what kind of interaction do we have? Let's look at this one. I always say that when it comes to interaction, we have three types of interaction. One, we have interaction when it comes to, let's say the business or the content of the solution that you're working on, the product that you're working on. We have interactions about the process that we have, the progress that we have and things that we can improve, or the things that we bump into, such as impediments. And we have things like, when it comes to the way we work, about the estimates. And I always say the estimate is where the content and the process meet. Now, how does it work? If we take the same timeline that we always know, we always talk about the 2-week sprints, right in the middle. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. What is that we do? Right? In terms of, on the progress side, we all know that every day we get together. And why are we getting together every day? to make sure that if we have a problem going on, that if something is in the team not working the way we want, that we capture that problem as soon as possible and as a team can work on the solution. Also, we do always that retrospective at the end of the sprint. Okay, we worked in a specific way, but was it good enough and can we improve? So at the end, we have something here as well, right? So we have a daily and we have a retrospective. And on the business side, what we tend to do is, we say, okay, we go before the sprint into a refinement, we make sure that we talk about, we plan the sprint in, and then here we have a demo. And we make the demo into an acceptance meeting. And that's the one thing that you shouldn't do. Because if you have an acceptance meeting here at the end, what it means is, in an acceptance meeting, that people can not accept, they can reject. And especially if you have, this gap between the moment that you go into a sprint and the moment that you deliver, then if this is the first time that the stakeholders see it, they will reject because they haven't seen it before. So you have to find your way to have multiple times, short feedback loops. And that's what we call the heartbeat. So if you see what kind of rituals that we have in the Agile way of working, we have on the process side, we have a daily. We have the retro. And on the business side, we have the heartbeat. And the heartbeat is about refining, it's about the short feedback loop, and it's towards the end of the sprint, it's building the acceptance. That's what we do. One last thing remains, the moment that you get feedback, there might be changes, there might be little issues, and you need to consider, the feedback that you get, is this really helping us? Is it really important that we bring this change? Or is it a nice thought and doesn't really, add to the value that we're looking for? So that estimation and prioritization is what you do every time a little bit here, right? And then you work towards acceptance at the end of your sprint. And that's the fundament of the interaction concept of Agile. So we talked about Agile, avoiding delay. We talked about the interaction concept that we have written down here, the types of sessions that we have, either serving the content, serving the process of where process and content meet, the estimates. The question is, who is going to be there? Are we going to be sure that we have everybody in that process so we are not confronted at the end of a sprint with someone who can stop the team? Because if I have someone who can accept or reject the team, potentially I have a risk at the end of my sprint, and I want to avoid that risk because I want to avoid delay. Even more, if you don't deliver to production at the end of a sprint, or if you're not ready for production at the end of a sprint, you can say you have a sprint fail, right? So how can we avoid this one? So let's look at the people, in the sessions, and mind the colors. Red is the business, blue is the process, and green is about, the estimates and making sure we get into a delivery. Now, what I would like to say is it's a model that I used in the past. When I was in the late 90s working with DSDM, I got informed about a model that's called the snowman. And it always starts with this, that, okay, in the organization there is a person or a team that is sponsoring the team. They need a solution that brings value to the organization. So they create the budget, they create the time. And from that team, there is someone with a visionary view on what the solution should bring to the organization. And of course, we have people who know in detail what it's all about. And remember that I talked about the head of the pension department before. You need people from the business who actually work with that solution on a daily basis to get the nitty-gritty details that will help your organization to get the value once the solution is operational and live. So I like to call them the business ambassadors. And those people are going to be part of the team. They are going to share the responsibility. Now what we do is, then they share the responsibility. Let's say, okay, this is a little bit of magic. I'll explain to you later on what it's all about. But I have people who, let's say, develop and who test. And I have people who have to make sure that the bridge, you can call it an analyst if you like, the bridge between the business people and the people who make something is closed. They have to bridge that gap. The point is, we speak business language, we speak technical language, and they need to be brought together, right? So you can say, Here we have, and you can maybe in Scrum terminology, you can say, hey, this is the PO, bringing people together. Also, we have people in the organization, and this is really important to understand, what I call the people from the non-functional standards. And what it means, if I have people from a business department who need a solution and we work on it, there are other, let's say, departments in the organization that can accept or reject. For example, I did a lot of work where the legal department, whatever we did for the business department, the legal department could stop us. I've done a lot of work for the communication department because we had to follow rules for fonts and colors and whatever, and they can stop you. And you want those people also to be part of it because you don't want to have people that can stop you. You want to work on that sprint, in that sprint, on that acceptance from day one to the end. So you build your acceptance towards that sprint. Right? That's what you focus on. We have also people that, as we know, are taking in the process. The Scrum Master, an Agile Delivery Lead, or whatever word that you use for it. And now if you bring that together, you can say, okay, this is where we go. Here we have this typical solution development team, 9 people or less. And I did in the late 90s and in the beginning of the century a lot of projects where I had a number of those teams, so 9 people or less, a number of those teams working together in parallel on one delivery, on one backlog. They had different characteristics. So you had software development teams, you have maybe teams to create the audit trail, you have teams to, whatever they were doing, different things, but they all have to align and get together and deliver at the same time. So you build, your team like this, and now the question is about the interaction. How does it work? And again, blue is about the process. Remember from the previous slide. So when it comes to things like the daily and the retro, the people here have their own retro as a team, right? So if you have like this 4 teams, there are 4 dailies every day. Every little belly of the snowman has its own daily. Every little belly of the snowman has its own retrospective. But also you need to make sure that you have on the content side your feedback loops, because we have those misunderstandings. The misunderstandings have to be taken out. So what you do is you make sure, like this, that you create that all stakeholder session, which I call the heartbeat. And in the heartbeat there's refinement, there's refinement and demos, but especially for me very important is that you understand that you have those short feedback loops where you have here and here you demo what you built since this. It doesn't have to be finished, but since this moment you do work, you show it. You get the feedback, you take it in, and then you show it, and then you show it. So by the time you get here, the people that have a say and can stop the team from going live by rejecting what they made are either from the business side or from the non-functional stakeholders. So you build acceptance towards the end of the sprint. When it comes to, who are involved, you need to identify upfront, before you go into your delivery sprints, what kind of non-functional standards do I have to comply to? Is there an architecture department? Is there an operations department? Whatever department there is, they will be with the team in the heartbeats you're working. And instead of testing what a team has made, they are not testing anymore. Now their role is a shared responsibility to make sure that they provide feedback in such a way that by the end of the sprint we meet all criteria. It goes for the business people and it goes for the people from the non-functional standards. This is the fundament of the interaction concept, where you really cut out all your delays.